applications, right? Some of these names may be familiar, some of these names are, and they continue to be the ones that enable sellers to come on the network. Next slide. So yeah, ONDC is a made in India digital revolution for the world. It's backed by the government. We come under the aegis of the Ministry of Commerce under Shri Piyush, and we continue to work with the government in building a market and community-led initiative for increase of digital commerce penetration. Next slide. This is the ONDC Advisory Council, comprising of stalwarts from multiple domains. You see some of the population scale, DPI, digital public infrastructure architects like Nandan, R.S. Sharma from Aadhaar, Adil, Dilip Asbe from NBCI, and a whole host of other luminaries who kind of, set up the advisory council to build out ONDC. Next slide. No, we are a Section 8 company, and these are our investors. All of these investors put together capital to build this technology program and kind of support our initiative on behalf of the government. Next slide. So we went from an advisory council to an operating company in less than 12 months. The advisory council was set up in June 2021. In April of 2022, we did our first alpha transaction, and we did a beta launch in September 2022, and we started to expand across cities. Next slide. We currently have 2.98 lakh sellers, 1.4 crore products, and we are currently present in about 550 plus cities. So early days, but already scaling up at a reasonably fast pace. Next slide. These are some of the examples of the impact stories. Kanchipuram weavers have made about, orders worth about 4 lakh rupees. Next slide. SHG's Kudumbashree has done about 600 plus orders in the first 3 months. Next slide. On mobility, which is another one of our large domains, here you can see Ayazullah from Bangalore, whose monthly earnings have tripled in 3 months thanks to reduced commissions and higher earnings. Next slide. So what is ONDC live in? ONDC currently on the B2C domain, which is the business to consumer part, is live in food and beverages, grocery, home and kitchen, electronics and appliances, mobility, fashion, health, agri, and BPC. On B2B, we are live in grocery and fashion. Upcoming domains on ONDC's travel, financial products, and services. Next slide. I want to talk a little about the F&B ecosystem and what impact we are having. Next slide. So again, try to synthesize this problem in the pure F&B restaurant brand context, right? There is a high customer acquisition cost. If you're a restaurant, there's high logistics dependency, and finding a tech partner to digitize continues to remain a problem. You depend on the platforms, but commission and marketing spends are upwards of 30%. There is challenges with pricing and access to customer data, all of which kind of impede the use of these platforms as a core strategy for you. Next slide. So what have we been designed to achieve in the F&B context, right? Build trust, right? It is a seller who defines customer value proposition. As a restaurant, you say, this is my pricing, this is my discount, this is my offer, and it's not the platforms that decide that. Optimize costs in an unbundled, interoperable ecosystem. One of the big changes that's coming in, companies are able to offer far better cost structures, because fundamentally, if you look at it, each person is bringing his expertise. Unlike a platform which is trying to do everything in-house, in the unbundled ecosystem, the buyers are being brought by buyer applications who already have a consumer base. Seller applications are typically brands that have been in the F&B space for some time, your POS machines, your ERPs, etc. And your logistics providers also bring in optimized costs, right? And also look at from a modular options, right? As a brand, if you want to be on the ONDC network, you don't need to use the entire structure as is, right? You could just be a seller on the seller app, doing logistics self-delivery, or use logistics on the network to figure out how best to use it, and different modularized components available as that you may want to use, right? Also, expansion of use cases, we are building a whole set of things, including thinking about how will we do self pickup, etc. Therefore, the overall access to multiple customers, dramatically reducing the CAC plus marketing costs. That's what ONDC is broadly trying to accomplish. Next slide. Now, this is the F&B ecosystem. On the left, you see brands that are live. You see marquee international brands, Domino's, McDonald's, Burger King, some of the largest food tech companies, Rebel Foods, Chai Point, Noodles, etc., which are all currently live. On the right are brands that are coming live as we speak. Some of them are in the advanced stages of integration, are going live as we speak. Around now one actually went live last week. Yeah. Brands are currently a part of the ONDC ecosystem. Next slide. This is the apps that are enabling. So if you look at buyer apps, this is what you'd seen in the earlier slide also. On the seller apps, these are the F&B seller apps, which are trying to bring in brands onto the My Hotels. I think we'll come to take questions later, right? Seller apps are, bringing in efficiencies of, trying to bring in as many restaurants together as possible. Logistics, I think you're familiar with the providers, as well as there are, enablers like DotPay, Paid Puja, etc., Urban Piper, which are kind of bringing in sellers online as well. So this is the large ecosystem. Next slide. I'll move on to the travel ecosystem on ONDC. Travel is very early. We have just initiated travel, but we're just getting started. So at a very high level, if I were to build a logical representation of the distribution landscape from hotel to a traveler, all of these different players come in between. There are wholesalers, GDS, aggregators, travel agents, OTAs, etc. And together they form the entire landscape. The landscape is complex with transactions going through multiple entities, as well as it is fragmented. Next slide. What we're essentially trying to do is you have the buyers and sellers. Buyers are consumers or companies that are doing B2B transaction, and sellers that are hotels that are trying to come online and do business, which will be connected through, next slide, right? Seller applications, which could be travel agents, wholesalers, aggregators, OTA sellers, hotels, etc., as well as buyer applications, which are your travel agents, OTAs, ONDC buyer, new buyer applications, etc., which will kind of try and do these transactions with lesser intermediaries, hopefully, right? Next slide. So broadly, we're not changing the current, ecosystem in terms of the operators, but probably defining a new way of doing business, and therefore the ability of newer players to come and add value, bring in lower cost structures, etc. Next slide. So at an overall level, if I were to say, okay, there is retail, we're doing travel, which is flights, hotels, events, experiences. We already do mobility, transport. So on the left, you see all the seller apps, which will kind of bring in all kinds of inventory online onto the ONDC network by joining the ONDC network. On the right, you see a bunch of buyer apps. They could be mobility, they could be transport, they could be travel. Potential buyer apps in the travel space would include everybody in the fintech or banking space, which have large consumers, which will tomorrow start creating demand via the ONDC networks. Next slide. So I think what does ONDC offer to hotels that's not possible today, right? Increase visibility and extension of direct booking, right? So think of it this as with all of these channels currently being in existence, hotels all are looking at direct bookings and technology enablers who will enable you to do perhaps more direct bookings, right? Flexibility to engage in digital commerce on your own terms, right? Right now, if you join any platform, the terms are set by the platform. It's a one-sided conversation versus, you are not able to decide what terms, what commissions, etc., that you will be able to set on your own, right? Payment, a whole bunch of terms are set by the platforms, right? Hopefully, rationalize commission structures in every domain that we are operational. We have seen commission structures rationalize and come down, leading to eventual higher gains to the inventory sellers. And of course, with new channels opening up, new avenues opening up, there is reduced dependency on current platforms. So that's broadly the structure of what we are trying to do, and try and tackle the current challenges in the travel ecosystem. Next slide. So as next steps, I would request you to formulate your ONDC strategy, chat with your technology teams, because a lot of these operators could enable you quickly because they're joining the ONDC network directly. If you have a channel manager, PMS, etc., all of them are in the process of joining, right? We'd love to actively engage with your community to strengthen the travel network with your feedback, suggestion, and guidance. And we look forward to building this together with you and support you in building more profitable and efficient and large, of course, larger businesses. With that, I'll take a pause here. happy to take any questions, suggestions, feedbacks, and try and answer any other queries, concerns that you would have. Like we can go off the presentation now.
Yeah, sorry.
Hi, I have a question here. Can you explain whatever you have just did in a very layman language without any kind of heavy words? Just a simple 4-line explanation as to how the network operates.
Can I request you to kindly introduce yourself so that we can know that?
Sure. My name is Piyush Kapoor. I am a hotelier from Amritsar in Punjab. Renuji, you know me very well. Good morning.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Right.
Good morning.
So
Good afternoon, Piyush ji. So I think that's a fair question. I think there's tech on the slide because the concept is new. It takes a little time for people to grasp. But let me try and attempt what you've asked for, right? Essentially, you will connect through your channel manager or another source to the network and bring in your inventory online, right? And anybody else on the other side of the network, on the consumer side, it could be a consumer application, it could be another, OTA, anybody else on the network who will be able to have access to this inventory, right? Now, a few things potentially will change in the ONDC structure versus current ecosystem. Your terms are not governed by what the platform tells you to do. You set your own terms, right? Also, there is a way to ensure that you can be on off network at your choice, right? You're not governed by platform rules. You're not governed by systems that bring in other issues and other challenges, etc. And therefore, we expect the commission structures to kind of rationalize. Let me take a food example on, say, there is a fast source rebel food, or let's take even simple McDonald's, right? You are in Delhi, you fire up the Paytm app, you say, I want a McDonald's burger. The McDonald's burger request comes to the network. It is broadcast, since it's a brand specific request, it gets broadcast to McDonald's. McDonald's will say, okay, these are my burgers. It will send you the catalog. The buyer app shows the catalog. The customer makes a choice on Paytm, makes a payment. The order confirmation is passed on to McDonald's, which then prepares food, invokes a logistics player who comes, picks up and delivers it, right? Now, in case of travel, there is no logistics involved. The customer himself or herself will come and directly interact with you. And therefore, there is hopefully a reduction in the commission structure and overall increased in profitability for the hotels in the long run.
Thank you.
any more questions?
Nitin, there are 3 questions on the chat from.
Yeah, I'm just opening that. You have. Let me just read through. I think there are dense questions. We have browsed to rival the efficiency of systematic.
From my hotels.
What is the execution ratio of success? Okay, let me try and answer the last one. That's the simplest questions. So my hotels, the network has 2 components that I didn't speak of at length, but they're slightly underlying the protocol, which is issue and grievance management and reconciliation and settlement framework. So essentially, 2 parts. Reconciliation settlement means money is collected by one party and it has to move to the other party. The protocol has the entire framework built out for money collected with a settlement framework of say T+1, T+7, depending on what's agreed at the time of the contract, for the money to move and any settlement issues to be rectified. We also have issue and grievance management, wherein if there is any customer complaint, any customer issue, right, there is a framework by which the complaint raised on the buyer app will be provided to the seller on the seller app to respond and an amicable solution arrived at. Now, the beauty of the IGM is that it's not just customer centric, right? That's the platform way of looking at it. It's also seller centric. If there are seller side issues, seller app side issues, payment delays, all of these can also be raised on the IGM, making it a more comprehensive approach to issue and grievance management than the traditional platform centric way of trying to, manage only, customer complaints. Having said that, I think these are early days, and I agree this is a very large and complex project with several moving parts and several challenges. So let me try and give you a sense of how much progress we have made without getting into specific. So last January, we did about 1,800 transactions total. So that's about 60 transactions a day. We exited December crossing 6 million transactions a month, right? right? So that's broadly the structure at which, we have operated, and we continue to grow month on month on a fairly good place. I think in the absence of economic compelling reason, I think you're thinking like a platform. I think this is an important one. I think good point that you raised. Let me try and dispel it, right? See, when it's a platform competing with another platform, I have to look at it as, oh, how do I provide a better financial value or an overall value to attract the customer? ONDC is not the one, going to the customer. That problem statement lies with the buyer app. ONDC in that sense, like UPI, is back-end infrastructure, right? We connect consumers to hotels, say in your industry, right? Now, it is for the hotel to set what advantage it wants to bring in, and therefore be able to attract the consumer. It is not for ONDC to compete against the platforms. In some sense, in terms of the whole democratization frameworks, one day the platforms will also be on ONDC. Several of the platforms in several domains are already a part of the network and are experimenting, how they could coexist on the network. I think the important thing network does is it democratizes the ecosystem, right? Platforms won't have the power in the long run to be able to dominate and discriminate, versus in the current ecosystem where platforms decide pretty much the entire business value chain. That's broadly the endeavor.
There is a next question from Ranjit RSO on how do we reach, what do you charge?
So there are 3-4 broad elements, let's take hotels. So the 3 broad elements, who will support you to come online, right? You typically have either, if you have a large enough tech team, you can do the integration yourself and come online, or you can use one of the seller apps and, we will connect you with them. Several of the existing channel managers are also joining the ONDC network who can enable you, right? So the most ideal way the fastest way for you to come online is you talk to your channel manager, and if the channel manager is already integrated, they will bring you online, or you ask your channel manager to join and therefore bring you online. That's the simplest way to come online. If you could also come in directly as a seller, if you're a large hotel chain, have a reasonably large technical team or a tech IT team that can do the integration, we will support you with all the integration requirements so that you can do that. Now, how much do we charge, right? So ONDC currently doesn't charge anything. We are a government supported Section 8 not-for-profit company like NPCI, and therefore there is no profit motive today or tomorrow for us to be able to charge. But having said that, we will charge something in the long run, and it would be something very, very nominal to kind of take care of our expenditure, right? Now, coming back to the other point you raised, the 2 other actors in the story, which is your buyer apps, which bring in consumers, and seller apps, which enable hotels, both also charge something. But typically what we're seeing is, buyer app for a seller app commission structures are far lower than existing commission structures, typically less than half, right? And that's one of the reasons that there is rapid uptake. Now, in the unbundled ecosystem, buyer apps are large consumer applications which have already spent money to acquire customers. They're not looking at travel only to be profitable. Seller apps are also applications that are already probably doing business with you in some form. So together, when they open up new avenues for business, they're not really looking at, trying to, make money the way the platforms are. The other important thing is, as a seller, right, and this is a network differentiation over platform, you are not dependent on the platform to be visible, right? Suppose you're on the network using seller app 1, and tomorrow you don't want to do business with seller app 1, you can port to seller app 2 or seller app N and take your core network ratings, etc. with you. For example, if you are a 4.9 rated seller having 10,000 bookings after 2 years, and you want to make a change in your seller app, right, those core ratings can be moved, and you will be available as a hotel on seller app 2 with the same rating structure, right? Therefore, you have very less dependency on seller apps, and therefore overall the cost structure comes down.
Nitin, I have one more question. Would you kindly elaborate on these seller apps and buyer apps? So what I'm missing here is that like for example, I use Access Rooms as my channel manager.
Sure.
And I ask Access that I want to get on board to ONDC. So what kind of an integration will Access provide? What are these seller apps and buyer apps, and how the hotel is going to get connected to them?
Yeah, so the seller app is somebody that you will need to directly interact with, right? And either Access Rooms as your channel manager, or another channel manager, if Access Room doesn't provide that facility, is your source to join the network. That's all that you need to do. If your inventory is already live on the channel manager, It is for a little bit of technical integration that your channel manager needs to do. Now, if your channel manager is not live, right, then you need to talk to a new channel manager or equivalent software, which is already connected. So the expectation is not for you to do the technical integration. If you're already working through a channel manager, you have to provide them your inventory, your details, your hotel room specs, photographs that you typically provide your channel manager. The same thing, your channel manager or another company which will bring you onto the ONDC network will expose to the network, right? So from your perspective, we have super simplified the entire onboarding process. Now the buyer apps are people that you don't need to interact with, right? On the network, the console, let's take this example, right? Let's say tomorrow Paytm starts selling, hotels and it's looking at Ritz Hotel as a potential, brand to sell, right? Typically, the consumer will come and search, say, I'm looking for 2 nights in Patiala from 1st March to 3rd March, right? The search comes to the network. Network broadcasts it to the entire ecosystem of sellers doing hotels who may potentially have inventory for Patiala, right? Your seller app, in this case, your channel manager access room, will be one of the seller apps that will respond and say, hey, I have, Ritz hotels available. This is the rate, this is the other parameters, and send it to the buyer app, which in this case is Paytm, right? Paytm will then curate that experience based on its understanding of the customer, right? And based on a set of business rules that it publishes online. You can see business rules published by all buyer apps on their respective website or even the ONDC policy site, right? And now the consumer sees that, okay, Ritz Hotel, I like the rating, I like the pictures. The rate is also something that I'm willing to pay, and I make a booking. The moment the booking is done, Paytm collects money and sends you a confirmation, right? Sends you a confirmation that, okay, 1st March to 3rd March, customer Nitin Nair, this is the booking details so that you have it, right? Now, depending on the industry, the payment structure varies. In your case, it could be, day of check-in or day of checkout or direct payment, all modes, the network supports. We don't really discriminate between payment modes. And based on whatever that payment mode that was agreed between the two, when you responded, you said, yes, Paytm would have typically said, I want 5% on this booking, and you would have said yes, and you said, okay, T+1, where T is day of check-in as the payment terms, right? Now this happens, Nitin comes, checks in on 1st March, stays at the hotel, and T+1, Paytm will settle payment to your seller app, which will settle it to you, right? Minus the 5% commission it had originally asked for. At a very, very, oversimplified way, this is how the transaction flows.
Okay, so now what is the basic difference between a transaction which is happening today without the ONDC network and the one that will happen once we integrate with ONDC as far as the commission structures is concerned?
The commission structures are typically lower. Like I said, typically we are seeing half of current what is happening. That's the upfront answer. Now, commission structure, ONDC doesn't govern or say that this has to be the commission structure. What we do is we have fundamentally brought in different elements, new entities into the business, and therefore the overall commission structure is coming down. If the lowest I'm seeing is half the commission structure of the current ecosystem.
Okay, so let me rephrase my question. For example, I already have understanding with, let's say, Paytm. Paytm is, let's say, charging me 10% commission on all the bookings that they're passing me. Sure. Now we don't do this directly. We go through the ONDC network. How does that change the scenario? Does Paytm continue with the same commission structure? Do they do a new tie-up through ONDC? As in, what difference is it bringing in?
So existing businesses to continue or not remains a choice outside the network, right? We don't govern what you do outside the network, right? On the network, there is no one-to-one arrangement, right? Paytm on every transaction in a non-discriminatory manner will disclose what commission structure it wants. And this is where I said your ability to choose the term. So when you get the request from Paytm, and all of this is happening through technology, it's not like people talking to each other, you will get to know what Paytm's expectation on commission is, right? And what its payment terms are, for example. And you would respond with either an affirmative or a rejection saying that I don't work with these commission structures.
So you mean to say it will be on a case-to-case basis, one-to-one basis?
It will be on a transaction basis, not on a case-to-case basis.
Each transaction basis, whether it be 10 transactions or 1,000.
But typically, it's not like every transaction Paytm will change this, right? Some of these are known numbers. For example, Paytm food charges about 5%, right? So similarly, food also, it'll have a number that, will be available for the market to know. And therefore, you can decide which, requests you want to work with and which requests you don't want to work with, or what time you would want to work with which requests, etc. So all of these controls will now lie with the seller. As a seller, you take a decision on what and how you kind of operate with.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to add one more point here to supplement what Nitin said. So Paytm is one buyer app, right? So tomorrow, let's say another buyer app joins, any of one of the banks join. So they will be automatically available for you to do business. They can sell your inventory. So anybody joining the network on the buyer side is your potential business partner. You don't have to do any separate integration. So one integration, and then as the network goes, you will get access to more and more consumer base.
Understood.
Any other
Any
questions?
more questions?
Hello, sir.
Can you please introduce yourself?
Ma'am, my name is Ravi Atri. I'm associated with Ahuja Residency Group of Hotels.
Okay.
As you mentioned that anyone who is joining the buyer's plan will be our potential business partner. In that scenario, how do we control the rate disparities?
Could you elaborate on rate disparity?
So, for example, if because we are working with the channel manager, which is Maximojo, and we are sharing same rates to our business partners, those are the OTAs, but each one is having their different programs, their different plans, and their different types as well. So they are reducing our rates somewhat or other on their platforms. So if any buyer is joining, because we have worked with Paytm in past, and they have also caused some rate disparities, that which we are giving, they are putting on discounts from their end, and then they are giving us less what we have given to them. So if new buyers are joining.
Very good question, Raviji. I think you've highlighted a very important network value proposition. So here are a few things that the network does differently, right? So if you look at it, you don't give rates and send it to people to use on their platforms, right? That conceptually doesn't exist on the network, right? Every time a customer searches, right, the request will hit your channel manager equivalent, Maximojo, if they are the seller app enabling on the network, and whatever rate you have configured for your hotel rooms is what is shared with the apps, right? Now, the ONDC network policy governs the fact that the buyer apps are not allowed to change the rates that the sellers have offered. It's a network policy, and any such things that the buyer apps will do is a violation of the network policy. The only thing that the buyer apps are allowed to do is to add an additional commission structure if they choose to, right? But changing the basic rate that the hotel, in this case the seller, provides is forbidden under the network policy, and our current structure takes care of it. So unlike the current ecosystem pre-ONDC, where you provide, say, okay, 4,000 rupees per hotel to different people, and then they configure in their system and they choose to configure what they want, what they believe will work, versus every request coming to you and whatever rate you have configured in your system is the one that is given to the buyer app, not manually or separately shared, that is open to change.
Noted, sir.
Indermeet ji, you raised your hand. Anybody else, any questions?
Hi, Nitin. This is Tej from Lemon Tree Hotels. I have one question. You said that the seller application has a choice to accept a request, right, in terms of the commission structure. Is that commission structure static or does it vary? So in the sense that, is it a commission structure by transaction, or is it a contracted commission structure for a particular period of time subject to review?
So Tej, I would look at it. So the truth is somewhere in between, right? Theoretically, it's variable at a per transaction level, right? Because at every transaction, the buyer app will send you what commission structure it works on, right? So as Lemon Tree Hotel, you can have your side system decide what's the max commission you'll pay. Say that's 5%, as an example, right? And anything less than 5 you accept, anything more than 5 you may not accept, right? That's how theoretically it is set up, but practically this doesn't change every day or every transaction. We have seen it stabilize very quickly, and buyer apps also wants to give clear visibility, buyer apps, right? Not one. as to what they will charge so that the hotels know and do not make the transaction structure complicated. To answer in summary, it is theoretically changeable at a per transaction level, but practically it is stable. And you as a seller side, right? And for somebody as large as Lemon Tree, you may not even need a seller app. You will have the technical team to do a direct integration, for example, right? You can configure your systems to determine, say, for example, what's the max commission you will pay, and any commission higher than that, you don't respond to that request.
Sure, so like you said, in theory, that commission structure can be variable, right?
Yes.
The protocol of accepting, right? Those are defined by business rules on our side. So, for example, there is a range which is defined. If the commission structure is within this range, then you accept it. Otherwise, I can reject it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a range. It's a choice. You can have, variability of any kind that you are comfortable with. And see, this is one of the core things, right? The network endeavors to give the power back to the seller to determine the terms at which he or she is comfortable doing business, right? And these are business rules on your side, and you govern the business rules. You change them at your discretion.
Okay, and one more question I have. So how do you stop, or do you stop a bidding process on the side of the seller, the buyer application? So for example, if a customer has access to multiple buyer applications, right? Mm-hmm. And the same request is routed through multiple buyer applications, right? Are you able to stop that, or you do not stop that? You let the marketplace decide that?
We do not stop that. And for reason, we do not need to stop that. And I'll explain why, right? Irrespective of the buyer app, right? If the request parameters are same, I'm looking for a room in Jammu from this date to this date, right? The seller apps get the same requests from multiple buyer apps, say 3 buyer apps. Let's take an example, right? Typically, unless the buyer apps have different commission structures, which is possible, right? Assume for a minute, just for, keeping it simple, the buyer apps also charge the same, say 5%, right? Technically, the same set of seller apps will respond to all 3 buyer apps, right? So it isn't really possible on the network to have a different pricing structure unless the buyer app wants to, offer a discount or, give a value add or something else, right? Which is acceptable. But like I said in the earlier example, when Raviji was asking, right, the rate comes from the seller, right? So for the same room, there is no opportunity to do a bidding.
So that I understood. So yeah, so there is no opportunity to do a bidding for the same room. So basically, we control the price that we want to offer for the inventory that we own. That's understood. Correct. But if for a moment I'm thinking from the standpoint of a buyer application, right? And obviously, customer can have access to multiple buyer applications, right? Sure. And if there is, so how are you promoting? So one is to say that there's perfect competition, right? Anybody reduces the price, at the end of it, it's like an equivalent of a perfect competition in economics, right? So everybody is in a perfectly competitive market, so nobody has any option of actually incentivizing the customer to buy on a buyer application versus a B buyer application, right? Correct. So I just wanted to understand that, is that something that ONDC is trying to promote in terms of a perfect competition between buyer applications? Because then that's true democratization of the buying process, right?
Indeed. So Tejashi, let me elaborate on a few more things that I probably didn't speak of. See, buyer applications show consumers a set of offers. Now let's go back. So for a minute, there is no difference price for the same hotel. Lemon Tree is shown as same, and Lemon Tree and say 5 other hotels are available for the buyer app to display, right? The buyer app will apply some logic of ranking, which is a combination of say rating, say price, etc., and present it to the customer, right? So ONDC governs, right? This, ranking algorithms or the logic has to be transparently available so that people know how you are ranking, right? It's not something that is proprietary and hidden. And it is mandatory that the buyer app interface provides customers the choice to change this algorithm. For example, I provide you a certain set of hotels in a certain order. There is a logic that I am, rating first, right? But the customer will need to have the ability to use a filter, say, for example, price, right? Or occupancy, or I don't know what that variable is, whatever that the seller app has sent, to be able to do a re-ranking. So that way, we strongly encourage competition.
Okay, so it's basically giving the power in the hands of the consumer, not in the terms of the buying platform per se, right? So essentially, if I think about it from a buyer platform, I am not able to increase my GMV in absence of customer preferences or choices, right? So in the sense that sometimes, large part of this buying applications say that their ranking is proprietary, etc. So, that it's very opaque in terms of how they are
Yeah. I
offering
think we're
what.
trying to bring in transparency there. So let me just add one more point here. I mean, the one way to think about it is consumer is eventually the one buying a hotel room, right? The hotel is the one that has physically built the hotel, managed it and offered the service, right? What we are endeavoring to do is middlemen, all the people who come in the middle, can't have a disproportionate share of the transaction, which is today the case, right? Which is 25%, right? Versus, having some reasonable share of the transaction because they are enablers, right? So nobody's taking away the fact that you need, enablers in between, but everybody, I think, broadly agrees that the enablers can't be taking the lion's share of the money that is being, made.
Sure. Right. Thank you, Nitin. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I think there was somebody else who had raised a hand. Sorry. I
Hi.
don't see. Yeah, Jatin, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jatin Kukreja, Glades Hotel Mohali. Nitin, you said that ultimately we are shifting dynamics from, say, buyer end or, the buyer apps to more towards, say, the actual business sellers like hotels.
Yeah.
So definitely buyer apps are going to resist that change. And, don't you think it's possible that, say, Hotel X moves to ONDC with a lower commission structure. Hotel Y, which is not on ONDC, but is paying a better commission or a higher commission to the buyer app independently. So there will be some kind of incentive to the buyer app to promote that particular hotel more compared to Hotel X, which is through ONDC and paying a lesser commission. So at least in the short run and maybe in the long run, everyone will definitely move towards the lower commission structure. But in the short run, that is going to impact the business of X or the hotel which has actually moved through ONDC.
So Jatinji, two things here. See, firstly, we're not asking you to leave what you're doing, right? The network wants to, at fair terms, grow because we are adding value. So nobody's saying that you should get off the OTA, stop doing business with your current OTAs or anybody that you're doing with. Any channels that you have, please continue to use them, right? There's no, ask to stop, doing business the way you're doing business today. We are opening up a new channel, a new way to access market, right? And we believe the overall structure of this market access will mean that people will, over a period of time move to the network, right? Now, in the middle, there could be ups and downs, probably, right? And therefore, like I said, we're not asking you to stop doing business with whatever channels you're doing business, right? In the hope that ONDC will work, we don't want you to destabilize your business. That's not the ask, but the ask is to come join, experience the network. And as you see benefits, we see more and more adoption coming in. And therefore, then the network starts becoming the common baseline for everybody.
So what do you recommend without, sacrificing the present business? What is the best, strategy to get on board with ONDC and, without hampering the existing business, at least in the short run?
Yeah. So like I said, the channels I mentioned earlier are consistent with your ask. So if you look at, say, a Rebel Foods or a McDonald's, they're not stopped selling on the current platform, right? They continue to be there, right? But they have now identified ONDC as an additional channel to get demand from, right? So similarly, you should come online. If you have a tech team that can do an integration, then integrate. If not, use your primary channel manager as somebody who integrates into ONDC and therefore puts your inventory, right? And like you get other demand from your channel manager, you'll also get, demand from the ONDC buyer apps.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ONDC is based on, everything on ONDC is open source. You can go to our website. You can also go to GitHub and see we are on the open source license. Everything that ONDC is built can be reused by others with due credit.
There is one more question from Ranjit Aroso on when do you plan to launch the service on hoteliers or for hotels?
I think the protocol specs, etc., are ready. We have a few applications integrating. Some of them are early OTAs. As soon as you have one of your channel managers going live, whichever hotel is live will go live. So for us, it's any moment now, right? It's a function of now, see, the structure has been built, right? The backend interfaces have been built. The travel model implementations are available. As soon as any of the channel managers integrate, and I would assume that we will have our first transaction probably in April. That's my sense. Pira, what do you think?
Yeah. So it is, if you can get your channel manager or tech team to go live in, let's say, complete the implementation theoretically, let's say in the next 3 weeks. So that's the time it will take us for to go live. I mean, or at least buyer apps to show the availability of that integrated inventory in their experience.
Hi, Nitin. This is Rizwan from Intermiles. Yeah, I know you probably touched upon this, but probably I missed it. Will payment modes like paying on checkout also be an option? And in that case, how will the settlement happen between?
So Rizwan, the network provides all options. Anything that today exists is doable on the network, right? The question is, will the buyer app and the seller app want to work in a certain way, right? So there are transactions where the buyer app collects and settles to the seller app. There are transactions being planned where the seller app collects and settles the commission back to the buyer app, right? There are also transactions being planned where it is pay at the hotel, for example, right? Yeah. So all those modes exist. This will be governed by the customer request coming via the buyer app. The buyer app will set. So for example, commission, who will connect payment, what type of payment, etc., are flags which are exchanged during the search request on the protocol. Right? And as a seller, you are accepting, right? You can say, no, I don't, like somebody says, okay, the settlement is T+5, right? You can say, I don't work with T+5. You don't respond to that request.
Got it.
Right? So it's at a transaction level, an agreement that is happening between the buyer app and the seller app as to how and who will collect payment and how it will move. What will be the commission structure? The commission can be a percentage or a fixed amount. Both models exist on the protocol, right? And at what frequency will the money be settled either ways? It can be buyer collecting and deducting commission and settling to the seller, or seller collecting and then settling the commission to the buyer app, right? Or money being collected at the hotel, for example. All of these models the protocol supports. I mean, true to our name, we are open, and we therefore look at every model that is already existent in the current business environment and try to digitally enable it, right? And if something doesn't exist, we'll build it.
Got it. So basically, then you're saying all these are basically tackled at the time of the handshake, which happens between the buyer app and the seller app at the time of transaction, right?
Correct.
In the sense that all these are defined there.
Correct. When the search happens, the buyer app sends you a protocol level request that specifies its terms, right? You accept and choose to respond, or you don't accept, right? And if you accept and choose to respond, you will also put up your terms.
Got it.
Right? For example, I'll give you a food example. It illustrates, right? Buyer app says I want 5% commission, right? And I'll settle T+1. You accept, but you lay a term that a food order is non-cancelable. Right? Once you confirm, there is no cancellation. You have to pay me the full money. If there is anything at the customer end, you deal with it, right? So both of these terms have now been exchanged and become a part of the transaction contract.
Got it. Got it. Thanks.
Any more questions, members?
My name is Pankaj. I'm from the Radisson Group of Hotels. Just wanted to check, we are using the SAP, which is the channel manager, which is used with the all over Radisson. So will this be integrated with the Radisson, which is using, because we don't have any separate channel manager.
Pankaj, SAP, I'm assuming this is the ERP company, right? We are already in touch with them in several domains, and if they have a channel manager and that's something that we need to integrate with, we will. But typically, let me just rephrase this statement, right? It is for the channel managers to come understand the ONDC protocol and do an integration. ONDC doesn't do the integration, right? ONDC has defined the framework, set up the protocol, written the specs out that others will use, understand, and integrate, because we have a common framework for everybody, right? So in your case, if you would need to come online through your channel manager SAP, you will have to work with SAP that SAP integrates.
Okay, okay.
So Pankaj, a request can be sent by you yourself also to your channel manager to integrate with ONDC.
Absolutely. And if it helps, please feel free to set up a meeting. We are also happy to have a conversation. See, all of these channel managers are also evaluating to join. We're talking to several of them, right? And the more members say, look, I want to do this, the more it becomes something that, they will also do quickly, right? And I didn't know SAP was offering you a channel manager. We are talking to SAP as an ERP in several other contexts. In fact, they were in Delhi office a few days back. I was not part of the meeting, but I know we are working with SAP and Oracle as well, right? So if you want us to have that conversation, you can just initiate a thread and our guys will talk, and as part of the larger relationship, we'll ask them. See, the good thing is, if you are integrating for one business, and this is say from an SAP standpoint, right, our protocol stack remains common, right? We start from search, go to confirm, status, and update. There's about 7-8 sets of APIs that need to be integrated, right? There are differences at a domain level, how food will be done versus how hotel will be done versus how metro ticket will be done. But if they're already integrated in one domain, it's a very, very small change for them to, enable another domain.
Okay.
Right. So as an action item, what we could do is you can just introduce us and say that, you're keen and you can get the SAP team connected to us. We will pick it up with our internal team that's also dealing with SAP.
Okay. Got it.
So I'll share the presentation and
One sec, Veera. Gulshan ji was asking a question. I think he came on.
Hi, good afternoon to you all. I'm a revenue manager from Amravati, New Delhi. I have a question that what sort of security measures are in place to protect sensitive data, as in to ensure compliance with regulations such as GDPR?
So Gulshan ji, fundamentally, the network has security built in, and let me explain how, right? Now, while the ONDC protocol used for the transaction throughout, ONDC is only a part of the transaction in the search. Now, what is the information that typically is exchanged during the search? In search, you say somebody in Delhi with this, GPS coordinates is looking for a hotel, or somebody in Delhi is looking for a hotel in, say, Mussoorie, right, as a city, right? This is the only information that you send to ONDC. ONDC will broadcast it to the seller apps. Seller apps will make offers to you directly, right? And only after one of the seller apps is confirmed by the buyer app is any PII exchanged, right? Therefore, structurally, ONDC has no access to who your customer is, what their mobile number is, what data is flowing over the network. We don't touch that data, right? We only touch non-PII, like there is a customer looking for a hotel in Mussoorie, right? Or a customer in, Dwarka area looking for a McDonald's burger. We don't even know what is the exact address, etc. The exact address, etc. comes in once the transaction is confirmed. So that way, all PII is fundamentally protected. Now, individual apps are also obligated by the ONDC network policy to be compliant to all respective regulations that they need to, right? But I don't think we've really sat down to look at GDPR in the context of European Union. I don't think we have looked at, but we are compliant to whatever regulations that are applicable in India.
Okay, Nitin appeals again. Just a quick question. Is this application solely intended for hospitality related businesses or any business of any kind?
Pujit, right now we are live in 10 domains. Our endeavor is to have any kind of business, a product or a service transacting in India to be on the ONDC network, right? So this is multi-domain and multi-product and services. We're already doing 6 million transactions and we're just starting travel, right? So there are multiple domains. I think about 10 domains live. There's a slide on it. You just want to bring it up where we already have transactions happening across.
Great, thanks.
So good afternoon, Nitinji. I have one more question, that what sort of training and support options are available for our team to effectively use the platform and maximize revenue opportunities?
So I think that's something that you'll have to work with your channel managers. We don't get into training and effectiveness. See, please understand, we are a back end, right? Everything front end, how to deal best with, say buyer apps, what commission to charge. These are things ideally you should be working with your seller apps, which is your channel managers, for example, right? And they will provide you that guidance. The network doesn't really get into commissions, etc. What we do is we support you in terms of joining the network and making the best use of the network, right? In terms of being available, what product services. We also work a little bit of, we have an ops team that looks at governance. We have an ops team that also looks at, efficiency and efficacy in terms of transaction fulfillment, etc. But that's more an overall support. So this was the answer to the earlier question. These are the domains across B2C and B2B that are live. Travel, financial product services are coming. Financial products, we did our first credit transaction in January. Credit, mutual funds and insurance, all three on financial products will be available soon.
Thank you for providing this information. It was valuable. And thank you. That is it from my side.
While we are waiting for any other further questions, I will send you the presentation link and my contact details. Please do work with your tech team or channel managers or any of the travel technology companies or SaaS products that you are using to distribute online. Ask them to reach out to us, and we can work with them to onboard them on the network so that then you can also sell your inventory through the network. That's a request that we have as next steps. Just want to recollect. I think we are.
I think there is
Ganesh has a
question.
question here. Ganesh, can you please speak?
Hi, so I'm joining from Ahana Resort. So we are a family-run hotel. So my brother and I are both here. My main question was, how can we, have you guys done testing on user friendliness of this app and like sort of this, how can we use this platform, this e-commerce platform, in a way that we can also do personalizations and customization if we are a smaller chain and not like a bigger chain of hotels?
So Tanishq, we are not a platform and we are not an app. Both we are not. We're back in infrastructure, right? So essentially, the user experience will be governed by the buyer app. It will be Paytm, PhonePe, whoever is offering your inventory, they will govern the user experience, right? What you can ensure is to have rich content that is being shared. For example, when there is a request that hits you, the quality of content will also be one of the factors buyer apps will use to rank you better, right? And the quality of content means not just say rooms and photos, it means the quality of say pictures, right? The kind of information you provide, the number of tags that you fulfill, even if they are optional, will be what so the user experience will completely be governed by the buyer app. You don't get to govern the buyer, experience.
I see. And in terms of like linking in the backend structure, is that something that your team mostly just helps us with?
So like I said, you will have to work with whoever is your channel manager, SaaS equivalent, to get that part enabled, right? Depending on how you publish your inventory online on other platforms, right? How do you get demand from other sources? You will need to figure out a way to connect to the ONDC network, right? Connecting to the ONDC network is something that we support with, but it's a technical integration.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanishq. Anything else? I think we are slightly over on time. If there are any specific questions, maybe happy to take one or two more, and then we can wind up. Both of us are available. Veera's coordinates are available. Please feel free to reach us, and we'll also try and reach you, initiate that conversation with your channel managers to get you integrated to the ONDC network ASAP.
Any more questions from members? We will be circulating the... Yes, please. Yes, Daskaranji.
Yeah, so my name is Jaskar and I'm from Lemon Tree Hotels. So I just have one question. So will we have more access to customer data since the process is now democratized? So can you speak something on that?
See, typically we've seen, in fact, that was one of the points that we saw in the food, right? Right now, when you get a food order, you get to know who the customer is and who's ordering. Right, that information is today shared, and the hotel also we expect it to be similar. But anyway, see, in your industry, it's not such a big problem because the customer comes to you, right? Pre-order, there is no information shared. Pre-order, you only get to know that a customer is looking for a room in your city or in your area, right? But post-order, typically all these information will be available. And I'm not sure what the concern is in your business, because in your business, you anyway do a KYC at the hotel, right?
Yes.
You anyway have information. What else would you typically want more than that?
So a lot of times, let's say if we receive a booking from an OTA, we might not get the email ID or other personal details of the customer, which we can use to maybe directly target them. And we probably have to ask the customer at the front desk maybe to give up these details, which he might not be giving up so easily, which he's so readily given to the OTA. So
yeah, so I think this is going to be a difficult slope. I'll be honest with you. At a 5% commission structure, if you're going to try to bypass the OTA after he gave you an order, right? The OTA or equivalent buyer app is not going to be friendly to you, right? I mean, I would recommend that the OTA be or the buyer app be the buyer app, and while you have that information, if you're going to target them on the sites, buyer apps will take action. I think the point here is, unlike the current ecosystem where you're paying what 16-18% commissions are going to be far lower, right? So I think we'll have to let the buyer apps also have a viable business and not try to take them out of business.
Makes sense. Okay.
Cool, Renuji. I think that's about it on the questions. Both available if there is anything else, and happy to engage with members more and try and bring all of you onto the ONDC network soon.
Thank you, Nitinji. And I would also request our members, we add in this to, follow us on the social media channels. Details are here, and your presentation and your coordinates will be circulated to all the members. If they have any questions, they can one-on-one come to you and they can have it resolved also. Thank you for joining us today. I also thank all our members for this.
ONDC.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you, Veera. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thapliar, for your precious time.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for making this initiative of association successful. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.